Season's greetings, heroes! Welcome to the inaugural installment of Panels to Plastic, a month-long celebration of the true meaning of Christmas. Toys. 5 weeks, 5 videos, all dedicated to superhero toys. And we're kicking things off as only Panels to Pixels can, with a festive celebration of rampant consumerism in the mid to late 1990s. Now, growing up, my family was very much an Argos family. Argos, for those outside the UK, is basically our answer to Sears, a catalogue retailer that inexplicably continues to exist in defiance of online shopping. My sister and I would spend hours leafing through the Argos Christmas catalogue, months in advance, jotting down the product numbers of our most desired items. My parents would then head into town, order everything in store, and that was it. Christmas shopping done for the whole family. Who says the internet has made things more convenient? A few years ago, Argos celebrated 40 years of catalogue shopping by compiling an online archive of every one of their hefty Yuletide tomes from the past 4 decades, with their excellent Book of Dreams site. Sadly, Argos took the site down just a few months after launch, but fortunately, I had saved some of my favourite pages, and have been able to piece together others from the internet archive. For the nostalgically inclined, these catalogues are an absolute goldmine. Yes, nestled between the vintage aerobics gear, the comically large camcorders, and the ugliest sofas you've ever seen, is an exhaustive encyclopedia of every toy I ever owned or dreamed of owning in the 90s and early 2000s. So sit back, relax, grab a bowl of sugary cereal or a cheap can of corner shop cherryade, and join me as I peruse the pages of my childhood Christmases and share a few memories along the way. Ho 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 heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and these are the superhero toys of Christmas past. Christmas 1994 would have been around the time I first started to become aware of what Christmas actually was, and engaged in choosing what toys I wished to receive. Having said that, I hadn't yet fully graduated from Fisher-Price to superheroes. Even so, I've pulled out this page featuring a nice big spread of X-Men figures. By 1994, the X-Men animated series had been on air in the US for 2 years already, although it didn't arrive on this side of the Atlantic until a year or 2 later. Either way, this was the height of mutant mania, and Wolverine gets some prime real estate in this Christmas 94 catalogue. I was a bit too young to get my hands on the early Toy Biz X-Men line at the time, although I would inherit a well-loved Wolverine and a paint-chip Cyclops from friends and cousins as I got a bit older. In fact, I've recently started picking these figures up again for the nostalgia value, and they still look great all these years later. That is an iconic Wolverine. Aside from a couple of Secret Wars figures in the 1985 catalogue, and a powerized, I think they mean powerized Spider-Man figure made by Ideal in the late 80s, this was the first time any Marvel toys would be prominently featured in an Argos catalogue. Serendipitously, it was around this time that I was just starting to explore the world of comic book heroes, through video games, cartoons, and indeed toys. No wonder then that Spider-Man, Batman, and Wolverine figures, playsets, and costumes would define my childhood for the remainder of the decade.
When the city has lost its mind, and its protector has found his heart.
The following year saw the release of Batman Forever, and let me tell you, I've never been more of a Batman fan than I was in the mid-90s. The Dark Knight was instrumental to my early love of superheroes, and I think that's because, as a kid, Batman is so easy to understand. No weird superpowers or lore to memorize. He's totally unambiguous in his motivations. You don't even really need to know anything about his alter ego Bruce Wayne to enjoy the character. He looks cool and he punches bad blokes. Enough said. Batman Forever was really my first comic book movie. I may have already been watching Batman the Animated Series on Saturday mornings, and had played my older brother's copy of Batman Returns on the Sega Mega Drive, but Batman Forever is the first time I really interacted with the character, and attempted to understand his world. Not a great introduction, in hindsight, but as a lifelong lover of all things camp, I can still find a lot to like about Forever. The banger soundtrack, if nothing else. Anyway, back to the toys. I accumulated a bunch of Batman figures throughout my childhood, from various movies and animated series, but the figures that really stick out to me from this catalogue are the Kenner-produced Legends of Batman line. These figures were a weird jumping on point to the character for a young me, but I absolutely loved them. They came out at that point in the mid-90s, when toy companies, in the wake of Todd McFarlane's Spawn line, were trying to pitch their action figures at older collectors, but still make them kinda cheap with poor paint applications and kid-friendly designs. They featured Elseworlds versions of the Dark Knight and his supporting cast from different time periods. Weird, but awesome. I had a ton of these figures. Future Batman, Cyborg Batman, Medieval Knight Batman, but chief among them was a design that I still love to this day. Pirate Joker. What can I say? I just like the cut of his jib. I also have to call out the Batman dress-up costume at the bottom of the page. I'm kind of overwhelmed by the tactile sense of nostalgia I have for that costume. I can almost still smell and feel the itchy polyester cowl and cape, which was prone to giving static shocks. I loved this thing. I felt like Batman every time I put it on, even though in reality I was less like the Dark Knight and more like the Dork Knight. The following year brought us toys based on the Spider-Man animated series, again 2 years after it first aired in the US. This seems about right to my memory because I vividly remember when the show started airing in the UK, even though I would have been a bit too young in 1994. If Batman the Animated Series first ignited my interest in comic book heroes, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon poured a bottle of lighter fluid all over it. Once again we see a dress-up costume that I have sort of fond memories of. Don't get me wrong, I had and loved this costume too, but even as a kid I had some valid concerns regarding comic book accuracy. I am of course referring to those confounded mouth and eye holes. Like, I get it, they were understandably wary about giving a full face cotton mask to kids that were going to run around and suffocate in their own sweat, but at the time I despised that mouth hole. It didn't make me feel like a superhero with the proportionate speed, strength and agility of a spider, it made me feel like a massive dweeb, which of course I was. I always really loved those mini play cases, and I think my parents liked buying them for me more than full-size action figures. For the price of one figure, you get a whole playset with a bunch of characters to play out different scenarios with. That particular playcase featured Mysterio's Wonder Studios, replete with deadly traps and smoke screens. I still have mine today, with all the figures. It was a major childhood favourite. Not pictured in this catalogue, but also a big deal to me as a kid, was the Spider-Man Projectors line. These were 10-inch figures with a little light in the chest that would project stills from the cartoon onto walls, ceilings, or straight into your cornea if you, like me, enjoyed looking directly into the light. To be honest, the actual projector function wasn't particularly impressive, but just having a 10-inch Spider-Man doll that I could take everywhere and even sleep next to cemented the webbed wallcrawler as one of my favourite characters from such a young age. Christmas '97 brings us an even better look at the bombastic Balaclava Man suit, plus more Spider-Man animated series figures. That Spider-Mobile was always my white whale. I asked for it year after year, but I suspect it was too high-ticket an item for my folks. Now don't get me wrong, I certainly wasn't hard done by. I recognise what a privileged and plastic junk-filled childhood I had. Even so, I wish I got my hands on that damn Spider-Man car, and I frequently have to talk myself out of buying one now as a 30-year-old. Also, let's not forget the Street Sharks. Hell yeah. I'm not ashamed to say that the Street Sharks were my generation's Turtles. I went all in on the cartoon and toys. I'd quite like to do a deep dive, pun intended, video essay on the Street Sharks at some point, so let me know in the comments down below if that's something you want to see. Yet more Toy Biz Spider-Man figures. Damn, this series went on for a long time. Even as a little kid, I remember feeling like the line had jumped the shark once they started doing so-called web splashes, which were basically bath toys. What the hell does Spider-Man need an inflatable raft for? The real stars of Christmas '98, at least to me, are the toys based on the Incredible Hulk cartoon. Man, I love the art style of this show. To this day, it's kind of my ideal look for the Hulk, and those designs translated perfectly to toys. These figures would have been among my earliest exposures to the Jade Giant, a character that had a huge impact on me as a kid, as I've talked about many times here on Panels to Pixels. I had this particular Hulk figure from this line, and let me tell you, he was a chunky boy. You could really throw that thing around and imagine him as an indestructible, irradiated rage monster. A definite childhood favourite right there. Skipping ahead a few years to 2002, and Spidey is once again the headline act of the Christmas catalogue. No surprise really, since this was the year of the first Raimi movie, but what stuck out to me is that toys based on the film are so underrepresented here. As you can see, Spidey figures had come a long way since the 90s, with the Spider-Man Classics line. These 6-inch figures featured more anatomically correct sculpts and more articulation than a room full of speech therapists. Not a lot really sticks out to me from this page. I had a bunch of Spider-Man Classics and the movie figures from this time, but I was getting to the they're not toys, they're action figures age, of displaying them neatly on bookshelves and under no circumstances ever playing with them. I think I still secretly wanted that Spider-Man car though. Our final entry comes from 2003 and coincides with the release of Ang Lee's Hulk. Now, I've already made an entire video essay about how much this movie meant to me as an adolescent, If you haven't watched it, good news, neither did half the people who commented on it because they were triggered by the title. Nah, but watch it really, it's one of my best videos. The merchandising for this movie was crazy. With the exception of Star Wars Episode 1, I don't remember ever seeing so much tie-in junk food, t-shirts, action figures, video games, novelizations, you name it, and I wanted it all. I lapped this movie up, and by Christmas 2003 I had successfully turned my bedroom into a facsimile of a Green Goliath gift shop. In hindsight, the Toy Biz figures pictured here were really nothing to write home about, even by the standards of the day, while the concurrent Marvel Legends line was redefining what an action figure could, and eventually would, look like, the Hulk movie line seemed old-fashioned and kind of cheap. Of course, the toy we all remember from this page is the Hulk hands. Everybody had Hulk hands, and a little sizzle here, I have another video lined up for Panels to Plastic later this month for fans of putting on foam rubber fists and mercilessly beating your friends, siblings, really anyone within arm's reach. Make sure you subscribe for that one. From 2003 onwards, I received fewer toys, and was more concerned with actual comic books, video games, and that early swathe of Marvel movies. The toys I did buy were the more heavily sculpted and articulated Marvel Legends and Marvel Select lines that I had to go to dedicated toy stores or comic book shops to seek out. And with that, my days of poring over the pages of the Argos catalogue and counting down the days until Christmas morning were over. This holiday season, celebrate the true meaning of Christmas. Toys. Ho 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 heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and I collect superhero toys. And Star Wars toys, and monster toys, also aliens, a little bit of He-Man, but most importantly superhero toys. Which is why for the entire month of December 2022, Panels to Pixels is becoming Panels to Plastic. 5 weeks, 5 videos, all dedicated to superhero toys. From the Marvel toy line that changed comics forever, to a history of Hulk hands. Plus a video I've been working on for years about the best Christmas movie of all time, that just so happens to feature a buttload of superhero stuff.
This is cool.
On top of all that, I'm going to be posting loads of my toy photography over on Instagram at Panels to Pixels. So subscribe to Panels to Pixels on YouTube if you haven't already. Make sure you give that bell icon a little festive ring-a-ding-ding so you don't miss out on a single video. And join me as I celebrate the true meaning of Christmas. Toys.